Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I actually think it's a pertinent week to have a conversation about misinformation and the impact that has, in particular, as you noted, on Hispanic communities, minority communities, because everybody's getting clobbered by the economic policies of the Biden administration. And this week, we've seen the Biden administration double down on misleading rhetoric to mislead the American people as to what's happening from the economic policies of this administration. They started by pumping money into the economy, saying reckless spending in Washington will not cause inflation. When it caused inflation, they changed their gears. And they said the inflation is temporary and transitory. When it was no longer temporary and transitory, the Biden administration said, it's caused by Putin. When it was pointed out that this inflationary environment started long before the Putin invasion of Ukraine, they said, it's corporate greed. And then this week, when the economic data is very clear that Americans are suffering under one-party Democratic control, getting clobbered and punched in the face by higher gas prices, higher grocery prices, the Biden administration doubles down on the misinformation campaign. It is attempting to redefine the term recession, which has been very consistent. The past 10 recessions have all used the same term, that is 2 quarters of consecutive negative economic growth. But the Biden administration doesn't want the American people to know what's happening, although the American people are suffering from one-party Democratic control. And in particular, Mr. Chairman, I think it is noted that the people who are suffering the most are the least amongst us, including Hispanic and minority populations. So we continue to see disinformation from the Biden administration in one-party Democratic control that's clobbering the American people. So what could be better than a conversation today about the disinformation from this information? I hope we dig in, because we've continued to see President Biden and Vice President Harris spread misinformation. They continue to attack election integrity legislation, saying it will, quote, suppress voters, even though the empirical data from the elections this cycle have proven them wrong. President Biden even managed to be called out by the Washington Post for his claims about the Georgia election law, called out for the continued misinformation and disinformation from this administration. I remember back when this subcommittee had a hearing back in April focused on disinformation on Spanish language radio. There were a lot of concerns about Latinos hearing conservative viewpoints. I hope that suddenly we have the same level of concern regarding new reports that show left-wing billionaire George Soros is set to purchase 18 Hispanic radio stations spanning 10 different markets. As we've seen, Hispanic voters have had enough of Democrats' disastrous policies and want to focus on problems facing all of our communities. We saw Congresswoman Mayra Flores' district in Texas as an example. Their communities are sick of the lack of action at the border in addressing rising inflation. As you see, the American people understand what is happening here. Democrats are desperately trying to push misinformation, a narrative ahead of the November election, because things aren't going the Democrats' way. The American people don't need the government telling them truth from fiction. They can decide that on their own. What the American people need is a government that leads. They need a government to champion policies that work for them. That's why full committee ranking member Rodney Davis introduced the American Confidence in Elections Act today to restore election integrity and build American voter confidence in our election process and outcomes. Unlike H.R. 1, which was crafted behind closed doors, the ACE Act has been in the works for over 2 years and is a product of many public conversations and meetings with folks who actually want to administer elections to learn what can be done to empower state legislators with the right tools to make meaningful reforms to our election laws, to determine what outdated federal policies we need to get out of the way. So if you're wondering where we'll be for the rest of this hearing, we'll be having a roundtable on the discussion over in the Capitol with members of Congress, state election officials, and key stakeholders to discuss how we can make elections run even better and ensure Americans have full faith in the process and outcomes, not undermining voter confidence by pushing misinformation as we see time and again from this administration. I thank the chair for holding today's hearing, and I yield back.